I want to pick up on something you referred to, history. That that the kids come up through our schools, and not necessarily just public schools, but Christian schools, and they're not taught the history of our country. You know, the Declaration of Independence was this was a treasonous document. The very fact that these these men, who many of them were very successful, they had land, they had businesses, families. Uh, they didn't have to do what they were doing, but they pledged their lives, their fortunes, and their sacred honor over something, a cause, a just cause, so powerful, didn't even exist in the world at that time. And and in this time, Elaine, this in the late 1600s, 1700s, what fueled that fire for individual liberty was was not was not something that we saw rising in France, which is a very secular revolution, but in America, the fire for that revolution really came from the pulpits. George Whitefield and many others were preaching about freedom, not freedom like politically, spiritual freedom, redemption. That there was a fire and a hunger for truth, for for that redemption and reconciliation, which led to the fact that they were living under a tyrannical government.
Right.
And they felt they had a just cause to say no. That, as we see in the early writings, we hold these truths to be self-evident, that all men are created equal. That is a spiritual law. That came from revelation, that mankind was that God was no respecter of persons for mankind, that mankind was special. He was a created by God being that was above the animal kingdom, above all things. We hold these truths to be self-evident, that all men are created equal, and they are endowed by their creator with certain inalienable rights, that among these are life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. The kids today are not taught about that. That is prophetic. That is, even today, the vision of the Declaration of Independence, it is still yet to be totally fulfilled. In fact, America paid a terrible price in the Civil War, because while we believed that all men were created equal, we were not acting on it. And so it was a terrible, terrible thing, the Civil War. But we got through that, and we won that. And out of that, the Emancipation Proclamation, and so all those heroes of the Revolution, all those heroes of the early and the creators and the founders of our country, they are heroes. Where there's no, if there's no heroes, there's no game. If there's no heroes, what is our guide, our compass? These heroes, as you said, none of them are perfect. Mm-mm. They all were growing up in an imperfect world, in a culture that a lot of us just can't relate with. But to be told today, and this is what I want to get to be told today as a Christian, as a believer, as a patriot, a man and a woman who loves this country, loves its history, to be told that all of our heroes were either racist, xenophobes, homophobes. They were this phobe, but that phobe, and they're terrible people, broken people. That's why we should tear down their statues. If that's what you're told when you're growing up, that by the time you get to high school and college, you will listen to everything that your professors are going to tell you. And as you know, most universities are very left-leaning. But if you're constantly being told that that this is not right, that your thinking is off, that you're not enlightened because you still believe in these old-fashioned principles of life, liberty, and pursuit of happiness, and rule of law, the Constitution. If you're being told that we're all equal in the sight of God, and that's not enlightened thinking. If you're constantly being told that the flag is racist and represents white supremacy, if you're being told that that hard work, sacrifice, education that's just a representation of white supremacy, if you're being told that that the founders were just terrible people, if you're constantly being told that America was never exceptional, never great, if you're being told this all the time, eventually you will believe it. And that is why people get elected that will tell you only what you want to hear, and they won't speak truth. That is why I believe that so many people would just accept a Joe Biden and a Kamala Harris as their representation of president and vice president. And for those of us who just see, we see it for what it is. When a man named Donald Trump came around, he was never a politician. He came into the scene as a businessman. He was sick and tired of the criticism of who America was, and he saw the corruption, he saw all that, and he's not a nice guy, to the average person who's very offendable. He's a street fighter, he's a businessman. He comes in because I don't like what's happening to my country. Well, you and I believe the exact same thing.
Right.
Now, we didn't have the resources that Donald Trump does, and he had the influence. But one of the reasons why he can go and do all those rallies and have tens and 30, 40,000 people show up is because he's the one that kept saying, it is okay for you to believe in America. It is good that you believe in our founding principles. It is good that we should believe in defending our police, our flag, religious liberty, that we should say no to all these corrupt politicians and the swamp. He spoke for us.
Amen.
And he ticked off a lot of people. And when you kick the hornet's nest, this is what's going to happen. And this is exactly what's happening now.